Hello and welcome to the Pocket Size PR podcast, the podcast where pocket-sized pieces of PR wisdom are distilled by communications and marketing professionals. I am your host, Charlotte Nichols, who's also owner of Harvey & Hugo PR. Today on the show, we have Liz Atkin. Liz is founder and CEO of Refreshing Comms, as well as being a best-selling author and TEDx speaker. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you, Charlotte. Lovely to be here.
So Liz,
yes,
please can you define PR?
Yes, I will try. I think you're the PR expert in this studio, but for me, it's the outward focus of an organisation. And I think that the focus of it is public trust. So there's a lot of effort and strategy and intent that goes into managing a reputation, building a positive image, and really enhancing it as well, bringing out the best of an organisation. And I imagine that it's very reliant on third-party relationships as well, which will be a massive part of it, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Love that. The keywords like trust, public image, all totally relevant. And I'm always so interested in what kind of people who aren't directly involved in day-to-day PR, how they define it. So thank you very much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And now something that you are an expert in. How would you define internal communications or internal PR?
Yeah, well, I always say that it's the most powerful management tool that a leader has at their disposal within the workplace. It's what they can use to create the right conditions for where they want to get to. There's a continuum really, or a spectrum, I should say, of communication. So at one end, there's very good, and at one end, there's very bad. And organisations tend to fit in certain places. So at its best, it meaningfully engages and connects people with organisational purpose and business strategy. So people have a sense of belonging and a sense of ownership of their role, but also are very much motivated to achieving those business goals collectively. At its worst, it's really just used as a one-way, top-down information delivery system,
right?
Which is very basic and really not doing anybody any favours.
And you see that a lot, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it's very common, and it's usually because there isn't. If the people feel that though there isn't time to maybe do things a bit better, but there's always ways.
So why should it be a priority? How important is it to kind of PR and communication strategies?
I think it's business critical, to be honest.
I agree.
Because what happens internally inside the organisation, so the dialogue, the conversations, the relationships, the situations and scenarios, they set the context and narrative to whatever is going to be talked about externally. And coming back to effective internal communication, I think there's a distinction to be made, if I may, that internal communication is a function, but it's a thing, but in actual fact, communication as a skill is a separate thing. It's a competency. It's a set of skills, some understanding, fundamental understanding of what makes people tick, and how you can use communication effectively to get your message across, to create influence and impact. So internal communication is one thing, but we've got to remember that what feeds it are people's skills or no skills in terms of how well it comes across and the message lands. And that's huge skill gap. It's being talked about a lot at the moment.
It really is. And I think it maybe has become such a huge skill gap because it's, almost taken for granted as a given, a basic. You should be able to have a conversation. You should be able to communicate as a human. But, particularly in the world we live in now, those skills aren't particularly involved as much when you're stuck on your phone.
Absolutely. Yes. I think businesses obviously are very competitive and it's very tough out there. So I often feel as though they're so busy chasing the sexy side
Yeah.
of business, the numbers and the innovation and everything like that, that they tend to leave behind the stuff that people really care about and really get affected by and respond to. And that's good communication. That's having a sense of connection to the organisation they're working for. And we see that more and more now, particularly since COVID, which is a whole of the podcast, but also with the new generational workforce. You know, it's very intergenerational, and also younger people are almost demanding, saying, well, what values do you hold? You know, what are you going to do for me? Are you going to meet my needs? Because I don't just need a paycheck. I can go anywhere for a paycheck.
Yes.
How about you meet my psychological needs, my emotional needs, my need to be flexible around a family, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Were you at the Entrepreneurs Forum conference?
I wasn't. I missed it.
Oh, there was a seminar or a talk about the power of conversations and having those difficult conversations, which quite often we put off as humans.
Yes.
And it's just, you know, going into the meeting saying, what's the one thing that we're pretending not to know here? You know, asking those really difficult questions, which are so important.
It is, yeah. And that is a skill. And there are tips and techniques that you can use. But if you take a step back from that, let's try and prevent those misunderstandings and, you know, bad feelings occurring in the first place. And that's, again, where your communication comes in, because if you use the wrong language, the wrong tone, and I'm not just talking verbal, I'm talking written, because most information that gets sort of translated and transferred about in an organisation is written. You know, it's emails, it's newsletters, it's announcements, this kind of thing. And what you put on paper stays there, you know, or screen stays there. And if you don't get to know your audience, and if you're not really looking at it from their perspective, you can get yourself into a bit of hot water there. Not intentionally and not maliciously, but because you're so intent on write the message, send it, job done.
Ticking boxes.
It's not, and then you waste significant amounts of time afterwards, even though that was a quick process for you. Afterwards, it's, no, I didn't mean that, I meant this. And, you know, I didn't tell so-and-so because I didn't realise they would want to know. And then you start backtracking, and then all of a sudden that really quick message that felt efficient and effective has actually opened up a whole Pandora's box. So at a time.
Totally. We're so busy chasing our to-do lists and wanting to get everything crossed off, ticked off. We forget about what is the end goal actually here. How can we communicate effectively so we're going to achieve that? Again, it sounds so simple, but it's not. And so what would be your kind of tip for businesses to improve their internal communications?
Well, I don't think the podcast is long enough to cover everything that I'd love to talk about. But really, it all begins with a shift in mindset. It's your approach to communication that is really going to change the level of impact and influence you have. I call it outside-in thinking. So instead of coming from, you know, the leader or the business's perspective, point of view, sit in the seat, metaphorically speaking, of the audience, of the employees, and ask quality questions of yourself. So, you know, as leaders, if we were on the front line, what would we be worried about right now? What would I want to know? What would we want to know? What would help us do our jobs better? What might we be confused about? Those kind of things. And although it takes a little bit of extra time up front, like I've already alluded to, you save significantly more time, and you're not risking damaging relationships either. So that's one of the main ones.
Brilliant. And I'm sure, like you say, there's loads more, but thank you for just that one main one now. And what do you think are the biggest misconceptions that perhaps leaders have about internal communications?
Well, again, there are several. I'll give you three. The first one is that the chain of communication should be the same as the chain of command. and it shouldn't.
Really,
it should be entirely different.
Okay.
So it reflects the fluidity, the reality of actually what really happens in a workplace.
Okay, brilliant.
Because there are conversations being driven outside of the official chain of comms.
Always.
Always. That's about 80% of what
Really?
is talked about and discussed,
Wow.
And there are informal networks. So if you look at an organogram, you've got the boxes and the lines, but most of the conversation is being driven by the invisible, the spaces in between.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
those aren't mapped.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're so right.
Yeah. And then another one is that message sent equals message received and understood.
Okay.
You know, I've written it, bang, it's gone,
Yeah.
email. And then the third one is that the cascading approach, which is your typical, usual, pretty much every organisation uses, which is, the CEO tells the rest of the C-suite, gives the message. They give that message to their immediate reports, who give their message, pass it on to the immediate reports under them and their teams. So every time that information goes through one of those layers, we start getting edits. Some things can be diluted, some things can be overemphasized.
Absolutely.
People can sometimes, depending on their personal situation and confidence in themselves and their role, might add their own little agenda to it. So while the CEO is sat at the top thinking, brilliant, everybody has got the same information at the same time, not so. The reality is that there are a lot of different variations and versions of that information. They've got to people at different times.
Yes.
And then all of those informal conversations that I've just been talking about are happening. And people meet in the corridor and they chat over the desk, or they might be in the canteen making a cuppa at the same time. So, did you get that? No, I didn't get that message.
Okay.
Well, he said this. Well, she said that.
Yes.
And then you've got a myriad of issues that fall out.
Oh, yeah, my goodness. I've heard of that described as the leaky bucket method or something like
analogy.
that before. Yeah, and it's so true. But you don't often consider these things, as a leader when you're rushing about and you just say, right, I've got to just get this message across.
Yeah.
But
And, we've got to acknowledge that leaders, are immensely busy. They're under a lot of pressure and they're sort of back-to-back meetings and trying to solve intractable problems.
yeah.
But really, until there's that reset, that mindset shift that I spoke about before, then you're not starting from the right point.
I totally agree.
Yeah, just step back first and then build it up.
It's so interesting. And then people listening might think, well, what's that got to do with PR? But I think it's everything to do with PR. It's how you're perceived. It affects reputation. It affects image. And, this is just internally at first, but then all that then starts to project outwardly if there's unrest internally.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. And like you say, everything has a knock-on effect.
Yes.
So through PR, what you're doing is you're positioning your organisation to have a credible place in the community, in the industry, in the sector.
Yes.
In that particular geographical region, and you need to make those connections. And it's the same internally with internal communication, that there are different functions and departments that have to understand each other, work together, not be siloed. The list goes on.
Oh, yes, it's so complex.
Yes.
How is AI changing the world of internal communications?
Yeah. Oh, goodness me. This is such a hot topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I think everybody would say there's good and bad. In terms of the good, where people are always looking to make efficiencies and reductions, so to get rid of real waste.
Yeah.
So automation of repetitive tasks, that kind of thing, is helpful. There's also a lot of development with AI on personalising communications.
Okay.
Because different people in, say, even the same team might like to receive their information differently.
Yes.
So some people like lots of graphs and charts. Other people just like bullet points, and other people want the whole shebang, so they can really digest everything to feel that they're properly informed, they've been properly informed, and that they can make a decision or take an action on the basis of what they've received. So, and the intergenerational sort of differences are going to come into play with that, I think.
Absolutely.
Different generations want different things. And also, data-driven insight is very helpful through AI for leaders as well. I think though, there's a big but, which is we're going to lose what happens to the human element, the human touch, that person-to-person connection in the workplace, which is so valuable and important. And although just because you can't always, add KPIs and measure it, it doesn't mean that it's any less valuable.
I agree. That's the story of my life measuring PR,
Yes. Absolutely. And that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
So, yes, it'll have some really valuable uses, but we must remember that we need that personal human touch. Because at the end of the day, the thing that's going to help an employee decide whether they're going to stay or not isn't going to be some algorithm. And the other side of the coin is, the irony really is that while organisations are starting to use AI to create efficiencies and do cost savings through, algorithm analysis and all of that, and looking at functions and roles that they can cut. At the same time, there's this other sort of wave of investment in employee engagement, employee experience. We need better communication skills. So the irony can't be lost on us, really, can it?
Such a contradiction, isn't it? And there was you probably will know it, a big corporate that recently, I think they sacked almost half their team. And actually then customer service really started to decline, and they had to start rehiring because they were relying on AI to do it. And obviously it's still not there. There's arguments, will it ever be there in terms of that full human engagement interaction? Maybe it will, but it's certainly not there yet.
Yes, yeah.
So,
yeah, it's almost like a dangerous experiment that's sort of, it's not being tried, it's just people are just going all
Forced
in with
it.
And then all of these human things.
Totally. Well, I feel that's kind of the thing with my generation. It is a technological experiment, mobile phones that have been introduced and, maybe even younger generations that have had them from a young age. And we're not seeing the full effect of these things yet. And maybe we are even starting to see it, with the anxiety increase in kids. Yes. But then there's AI thrown in as well. And it's just like, nobody knows the results of how it's going to be.
It. What's real, what isn't real.
Yeah. We go round in circles talking about it in the office. But actually, I've kind of decided I think PR is always going to have a function with AI, because the more that, AI content AI generates, the more it'll need policing as well in terms of brand, making sure that the right kind of keywords are used for describing your brand, making sure that there's no kind of false allegations that going out online or anything like that. But even if it all backfires and there's just no trust, we were looking at some video software where the AI can create that's so realistic. Really? And, the deep fake things like next level. And it's just like, well, what will you trust anymore? And then will it go back to traditional printed media, traditional press conferences where you can actually see and touch the person to make sure they're not hologram? Yeah. And then you can literally see that it's actually coming from them.
Yes.
To know that it's the truth.
Yes.
It's just a strange world at the minute.
It really is. It really is.
So much to keep up with.
Absolutely.
And it also then adds another layer of communication as well. We're talking about prompts all the time, but that's a form of communication. So we have to learn this new way of communicating communicating with the bots, the AI. It's when we aren't really that skilled in communicating with other humans at the moment.
Well, yes, that's right. And so when we go home, even if we can work well in an AI-driven working environment, when we go home, we've got family, we've got partners to converse with, we've got children, grandchildren, we've got friends, and you can't sort of put a value on those being able to have a lovely conversation with somebody. So, I do get quite frustrated how younger people are relying on technology and forgetting those interpersonal skills. And I hear a lot when I talk to business leaders, I hear a lot of that, not all young people, of course, but there is a trend, there is a theme coming through that the interpersonal touches of even coming for an interview, shaking someone's hand, hello, talking about the weather, just not there.
I know. And I don't like small talk, but there's a skill to it, and it is something that you practice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. Will we just start prompting each other?
Yeah.
Taking out the emotion, please make my tea. Or maybe not without the please.
Yeah, just press a button.
Yes, it's crazy times. Let's talk about your book, Refreshing Comms.
I don't know where to hold it.
And hold it at one of the cameras and we'll figure it out when we're doing the edits.
There it is. Colourful.
I love it.
Thank you.
It's amazing. And so could you give me a brief synopsis about it? And then we can also talk about how useful having a book is as a PR tool.
Yeah, sure. So it's really all about what makes people tick, first of all, because if you're going to communicate and connect with people, then you have to understand things from the human perspective.
Okay.
And really it does show that if you're going to be an effective communicator, which, let's face it, is there a better skill to have?
Yeah. You know? Oh, sorry, no. But I know what you're saying. Yeah. I need to work on mine.
Then, you have to know it's all about connection. So there's, communication and information are used interchangeably. And information is about giving out. And communication is getting through.
Ah, interesting.
There's a difference, yeah?
Yeah.
The difference. I wrote it out of sheer frustration because in the corporate world where I've worked a lot, I've worked in all sorts of different sectors, public, private and voluntary actually, and the same issues occur. So I was getting a bit frustrated about the wasteful communication that was going on and the pitfalls that I was seeing. So I wrote this book as a means of, for anybody from any background, it's a very easy read, it's got a bit of humour in it, to be able to pick it up and really start to understand communication a bit more in a playful way, but it's a very meaningful way as well. And it sort of charts a few of my experiences in it, and it has lots of tips and things like that in it as well.
Brilliant. And how effective is it having a book in terms of boosting your personal brand?
Yeah. Well, there's a saying, isn't there, that it's not the book you read that changes your life, it's the book you write that changes your life.
True.
Now, I can't honestly say it's changed my life, but genuinely it's opened doors for me. It's introduced me to some new people, interesting people. I'm sat here talking to you, which is lovely. But most importantly for me, it started new conversations. I've helped spark new conversations about how we approach and think about the workplace. What I want to do is reinvigorate the workplace. That is my mission.
Okay, love it.
Right? My way of helping to make that happen is through the communication side and the relationship side. And that's really what I'm striving to do now. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
No, I love it. It definitely adds that layer of credibility, saying, I've also got a book,
Yes, that's right. That's
just
right.
Even before anyone reads it as a PR tool, that perceived value that it then creates, you've written a book, you must know your stuff.
Yes, yeah. And AI didn't write it, by the way.
Oh, I know.
I did.
Yeah. And that's another worry, isn't it? If then things can be written so easily in the future.
They can.
Or now, yeah. You're right.
Yeah, I heard of somebody the other day who was writing a book. I thought, oh, wow, great. Yeah, I've got AIs writing it for me.
Yeah.
I tell them what kind of characters I want, and they create, it's a fiction book, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, whoa, really? Wow. It's just blew my mind. But, it's a very personal thing to write a book, particularly when you're writing non-fiction, because it's about your own personal experiences and you're sharing what you would like other people to know. The process of it.
I was going to say the process.
The
so
process,
powerful.
not the end result. The process of it is amazingly intense, surprising at times, tiring, exciting. It's all that.
It's a journey.
And that's a wonderful experience to go through. rather than just getting something else to do it for
I know.
you. So I feel a little bit funny about that.
Yeah. And do you know what? If I saw, and I don't know if it would be, certainly in the early stages right now where we're at, where it's like this book was written by AI, I wouldn't want to read it. Maybe when it's like loads more intelligent than us and it takes our learning to a new level, yes, maybe then. But right now, I'd just be like, oh, well,
Yeah. And storytelling, massive part of internal communication.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because we're wired to listen to stories and remember them.
It helps us remember, doesn't it?
Work-related stories I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not talking about going into work and once upon a time there was.
No.
But it's how you can get people connecting and realising all the common ground that you share.
Totally believe that. And it's such an important element of PR and what we do
as
well.
Of course it is, yes.
Brilliant. So what advice would you share for someone else looking to write a marketing book?
Right, okay. Well, any book, really, I would say go for it because you've just got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And even if you don't end up publishing the book, you will have taken yourself through such a personal development journey that'll surprise you. And it's very cathartic. So I would say do it on a number of levels. Definitely as a PR tool, absolutely. It's a great platform. You have an actual finished product that you can share with people, as well as, all of the different content that's in there as well. Yeah. And I would say find somebody who's done it.
Okay.
And ask them, what was your experience like, warts and all? Tell me, what's it like working with a publisher? How should I do this? How should I do that? And talk to a few different people, and then whatever resonates best with you, take their advice.
That makes sense. And don't use AI.
Don't use AI. Stop it. Get that pen out, in fact.
Brilliant. Okay, the ending question that we always ask is, what's your top PR tip?
Right, okay. I would say focus on building mutually beneficial relationships. That goes for PR, it goes for internal communication, it goes for marketing. In fact, it's a very good adage for life in general, really, isn't it?
Totally, yeah, personal.
So that would be mine.
Work on building mutual relationships.
Mutually beneficial
relationships.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Liz.
You're welcome.
Nobody can do business with you if they don't know about your business. But nobody will do business with you if your business's brand doesn't have trust and credibility. PR is the secret sauce in the marketing mix that can help achieve this and so much more. If you're interested in how PR can help your business, contact Harvey and Hugo, harveyandhugo.com, or email info@harveyandhugo.com.